Welcome to the voice of dynamic political centrism, the podcast hosted by Alan Steinberg, produced by Dr. Yonatan Yoni Yaris. Our special guest this week, senior Democratic political strategist, Dan Bryan.
Good evening and welcome. This is Alan Steinberg, the voice of dynamic political centrism. My thanks to our excellent producer, Dr. Yonatan Yaris, who every week gives us the height of high technology production. And we're very fortunate to have him, and I'm very fortunate to have him as my producer. Our special guest tonight is one of my favorite people in the world of politics and in the world, basically, of society. And that's Dan Bryan, who is here once again with us. And it's a special privilege to have him because, in my view, we have had the good luck in New Jersey to have a number of good young political consultants who really add something to the strategy and planning in political campaigns. But in this particular campaign, we have two excellent consultants right off the bat. First, we have the veteran Brad Lawrence, and then we have the coming star. He is a star already in Dan Bryan, and we have on the Jack Ciattarelli side, we have Chris Russell, who is just dynamic and dynamite in all phases political consultancy. I want to give just a brief introduction here and thank you to Dan, and I'll tell you why. This business can really be polarizing and can result in a lot of personal animus. Dan in this campaign is a consultant to Mikey Sherrill, and I'm not a consultant to anybody. I'm a journalist, but I'm very upfront and emphatic in my support of Republican Jack Ciattarelli. But that never affects the relationship between Dan Bryan and myself, and that's why he's loved and respected in the business of politics, because he is a master of the art of disagreeing without being disagreeable. And that is such a rare commodity in the world of politics nowadays, where you turn on MSNBC, you turn on Fox, you turn on CNN, and you think you're seeing a hate festival. But in the case of Dan, he doesn't know from hate. He just knows from good citizenship. And Dan, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, Alan, thanks so much. Number one, I feel like I'm going to fall short of your introduction in this interview, so I apologize in advance. I will just make a quick note. I am working for Democrats in this cycle on the assembly side. I don't work for Mikey directly. Obviously, known her for a while, huge supporter, and doing everything I can to help her get elected. But just wanted to make that small, just to correct the record there.
No, that's fine.
Really appreciate it, Alan. I came up in Hudson County politics, so there's nothing anyone can do to me to hurt me anymore. I've been through
You're
it.
invulnerable.
Exactly right. Exactly
You know,
right.
I love Hudson County politics, and I'll tell you why. When I was getting started, I had a late start in politics. I didn't really get involved full time until I guess I was 42 years old at the time, and now I'm a veteran of 75.
Wow.
However, when I first got involved, I loved following Hudson County politics because it was a unique cast of characters. In Hudson County at that time, you had Peter Weiss, who was, may he rest in peace, a great journalist. I think he wrote for the Jersey
Hmm.
Journal. But he was like, and he would give you an introductory course in Hudson County politics. And I say this in a very laudatory way. It was almost like the sovereign state of Hudson County.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. I never got bored with Hudson County. Later on, when I became the executive director of the New Jersey Meadowlands Commission, I got to work with the various mayors of the Hudson County towns that were in the Meadowlands district. At that time, you had Jersey City. Actually, it had a Republican mayor at the time. It was Brett Schundler.
Brett Schindler, yeah.
You had also you had Kearney. You had North Arlington, and boy, my memory's failing me. I forget what the fourth town
Secaucus,
was.
maybe?
No, yeah, Secaucus. Yeah, Secaucus. And Secaucus had a mayor that was a real character, Anthony Just. He was one of the most likable people in the world. But I used to love working on Hudson County matters. And at that time, the county executive was Bob Januszewski. Unfortunately, he ran into trouble with the law. It was sad for me because he would have been one of the great county executives in the history of Hudson County. But sometimes people fall by the wayside. But I
Hmm.
had a feeling in those years in Hudson County that I couldn't hurt them because those were solid Democratic areas, and I had no desire to hurt them. And I was working at the time for Christie Whitman, who was a Republican governor, still fairly popular at that time. And they couldn't hurt me and had no desire to hurt me. So my relationship with Hudson County was fantastic. I think Bill Mayer was an assistant at that time to Bob Januszewski.
Oh, the
And
great
it
Bill
was
Mayer.
just, what's that?
The great Billy Mayer.
The great Billy Mayer. Yes, absolutely. So it was a very enjoyable time in my life. But I want to start off tonight because I'll tell you a little story that really brought something home to me. It just happened to me recently. I always wanted to get involved in politics, and in those days when I was in college and law school, the thinking was in order to really get involved in politics, you had to either go to law school or get a full-time job in government, whatever. So I went to law school, and I had a nice career in law. You know, I don't think I was the greatest lawyer, but I certainly gave competent representation. But I didn't enjoy my career nearly as much until I got involved in politics full time when I became a senior policy advisor to the Republican Assembly majority. This is back in 1992. But in those days, you had the emergence of what I called the political consultancy class. And had they had that when I graduated, they didn't really have political consultancy as a profession until it didn't really come into its own until I was in my 1930s. Now, political consultancy is really, a state of the art profession. What I want to ask you to start off is, and it's funny, I ran into this on a personal level a few weeks ago. My granddaughter has already told me her name is Quinn, and it's a beautiful Irish name for a beautiful Jewish girl. And since Dan is a great Irishman, I figured I can relate this all in one broadcast. So one day
Absolutely.
Quinn came into me. I was reading some book on politics. I was doing something political. And she said, Grandpa, I really like Kathy Hochul. Now, it so happens that I like Kathy Hochul also. And the reason I like her is with all this controversy about, Zoran Mondami, she has refused to endorse him. She's been a woman of principle, but I got a kick out of the fact that my granddaughter said to me, I like Kathy Hochul. I said, well, I like her too. Now, my granddaughter's already told me at the age of 10 she wants to be a lawyer. I say, God bless her. But I'm wondering if a person wants to, how did you get involved in political consultancy? Because you're an excellent success story and you can help our young listeners if you give us some idea.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I was living in Hoboken in 2000. I moved to Hoboken in 2006. Right after college, I had a few jobs doing communications for hospitals. I started at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which, obviously a world-class oncology
They
center.
cured me of cancer there.
Is that true?
Yes, I had
What years was
prostate.
that?
Well, I had prostate cancer. This was when I was already at EPA. It's the best cancer hospital you can find.
What year were you getting treated there?
I got treated. I'm trying to remember the exact year. It was in my the second term of the Bush administration. It was around 2006, 2007.
Alan, I was there 2006, 2002. I'll only take partial credit for curing you of cancer.
No, you can
Um,
take full credit. It's a great
yeah, okay, good. I'll
hospital.
take full credit. I was in the comms department, but still, I'll take full credit. So wonderful, wonderful organization, obviously, and you can personally attest to that. Um, and I went from there to Hackensack Medical Center here in New Jersey, which is another great organization, now being led in part by my good friend Jose Lozano. Um,
Oh,
and
sure. He now is
you
a
know,
political star. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. So, you know, it was fine. I would say it wasn't exactly scratching my itch for what I wanted to do, but if you remember at that point, the economy wasn't great and any job was a good job, right? And I was lucky enough to be employed in my field at the time. But it was right around the time of Barack Obama running in 2008. And I very much, I didn't come from a political family. I didn't really know a whole lot about politics. I was woken up to it a
Well, you
bit.
learned fast. Holy cow.
Woke up to a bit after September 11th. That was my second week in college, and then in the
Where'd you go to college?
University of Scranton, and
Excellent higher education institution.
the 2004 race, Kerry in Bush was really the first race that I was kind of awake for. But the real first politician that I grabbed onto and really believed in was Barack Obama. And as he kind of went along, got the nomination, was elected, it inspired me to say, like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try here in politics. So at the time in Hoboken, there was a mayoral election. So I spoke with someone who knew Albio Sears, great former congressman, now
A
mayor.
wonderful friend of mine.
Fantastic guy, fantastic, one of the best. And said, "Would you pass my resume along to him?" And they said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to do it, but you know what? There's a mayor's election going on in Hoboken. Why don't you go volunteer in one of those campaigns and just get a little something on your resume, just so there's something political on your resume." So I went and did it, and it was the 2009 Hoboken mayor's election. And if you were, following Hudson County at the time, it was an all-time generational wild election season where you had a three-way of Beth Mason, Dawn Zimmer, and Peter Camarano in the first round. Second round was Dawn Zimmer, who was a reformer, community-oriented, wasn't a professional politician, had a real grassroots bootstraps organization against Peter Camarano, who had everyone in the state Democratic Party behind him, Menendez, Corzine,
He just got in
up
the
again.
news recently
Yes,
because
yes, exactly.
he
And I'm
was
happy he
reinstated
did.
in the bar. He was
Happy
good.
he did,
I
by the
liked
way.
him.
He was, yeah, happy he did get that reinstated. So I was supporting Dawn Zimmer in that election. I was the only young person to do so. Everyone who wanted a career was with Peter Camarano. I wasn't smart enough to do that. So I didn't understand the differences of, like, you got to go where the organization is. So I was the only person outside of the community that went and supported Dawn, and I worked full time for free for her. Got totally swept up in it. She lost, but put her council slate in, so she was named council president. But I had no job. I had left Hackensack. I was doing this full time for free. I really kind of jumped into the deep end with no backup plan. So I was then, trying to piece things together. Didn't really know where to start. Really thought I missed big. 3 weeks after getting inaugurated, Peter Cameron was arrested in Bidrig, as you remember, in
I
2000.
remember that. I tell you why I remember it so well. If I can just inject this.
Sure,
Peter, I had a lot of friends in Hudson County. I had a lot of friends statewide. So Bernie Kenny has been,
the best.
all the years I've been in politics, he's been a close friend,
Great man.
a great man. And Bill Gormley, who I had a wonderful time with in politics, I miss him in the political orbit, but he's doing very well right now. After his political career was over, he's at the DLA Piper Law Firm, one of the tops in America. But he gave a party. I forget what the name of the place was in Hoboken. It was a very elegant place, and they had a table downstairs where we all sat. And Peter Camarino came in. He was a very determined politician, maybe too determined, but he was a very determined guy. He would go anytime he had, and this is a good thing I'm about to say. Doesn't detract from him. He's had his own difficulties, but if he knew there was a political gathering in a town, even if he wasn't invited, he made it.
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
had a nose for that sort of
He did.
thing.
He did. He
So
really did.
he came walking in. He came walking in. I remember he walked into the party and he started shaking hands, introducing himself. And someone said to me, it may have been Bernie, that said, "This guy wants to be governor someday." So I figured I'd watch him. And then a few weeks later, I think it was, he got indicted.
He was arrested in Bidrig, so and indicted, as you said. So because Dawn Zimmer, the woman I worked for, had put her council slate in, she was fourth ward council person in Hoboken. She was council president, which meant she took over as acting mayor. She knew only one person who had any interest in being involved in politics professionally, and it was me. I was 24 years old, had no experience, didn't know what I was doing. And she called me and said, "Will you come work for me?" I said, "Sure." So it was just the two of us in City Hall, acting mayor, still council president, running for a full term that November, and I was to put it lightly, thrown into the deep end. Best job I've ever
Oh,
had. I worked for her. She was, long story short, elected, reelected. I worked for her for 5.5 years. We're still very close.
highly successful urban mayor.
Wonderful, wonderful person. A wonderful
Highly
person. Cut tax
successful.
is 18%, by the way. Not a
What
lot
was
of
that? I'm
Democrats
sorry.
can say that. Cut tax is 18% while doing all the things that she did.
No Republican can say
Not a
that.
lot of Republicans can say that. No,
Oh man,
it
18%.
it was a incredible experience. So I was there for 5.5 years, and because Dawn really kind of detested the kind of politics as usual types of politics. She loved the door-to-door politics, grassroots politics, didn't like the party politics. Um, I would go to represent her to all of these fundraisers and things like that. I was also 24 and broke, and I needed, a free meal. So I would go to all the events at Pacini's in Jersey City. And I'm not kidding you, 2, 3 times a week, I would go there to eat. And it would be this person's
That is
fundraiser, that person's
hilarious.
fundraiser. But that's how, to this day, I have all of these great relationships, especially in Hudson County, but throughout the state, of people that I met at those fundraisers.
Can you
So
still go to Pacini's whenever you want?
I mean, yeah, you remember back then, everyone had their fundraisers at Pacini. And by the way, Pacini's, the food was outrageous. So it didn't take much to get me there.
I couldn't eat the food because I followed kosher laws, but that was the restaurant where I went. We were downstairs
Oh,
at
okay, that was
Peter
Jersey City.
Camerino. Now I
Jersey City, yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah. Fantastic place, fantastic place. So, but anyway, because of that, because I kind of was the one representing her at all these events, I made all these great connections with wonderful people in Hudson County and throughout the state, and it really served to kind of get me kickstarted in the career. Left Hoboken in 2015, went to work for a PR firm for a year, really just because I was exhausted. I mean, it was a 24/7 job for a very long time. In the meantime, I had met my wife, got married, and I wanted to kind of figure out what was next. And I went from there to um, another, at the time, dumb decision, which was getting involved in the gubernatorial race. I didn't go to one of the two front runners, Steve Sweeney and Steve Fulop. I went to Phil Murphy because I really liked him, and I liked Brendan Gill, who was running his campaign at the time.
Terrific
And
guy, Brendan Gill. One of my
great guy.
favorite people.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And uh, joined Governor at the time, Phil Murphy, candidate Murphy, in June of 2016. September 2016, Steve Fulop dropped out of the race. Steve Sweeney dropped out of the race. He's a presumptive governor, and you're off to the races from there. So, you know, listen, a lot of luck along the way. You do make your own luck, but things certainly had to fall certain ways for my career to go the way it did. And working with the Murphy administration with Governor Murphy was, just an unbelievable honor, incredible once in a lifetime privilege. So, still working with him today on the political side now,
Right.
but could not, for I got my graduate degree, I would say, from Hoboken, from Hudson County. I got my doctorate from Phil Murphy, in how to act not only as a governor and elected official and a public servant, but as a man. Honestly, he's a wonderful human being. Can't say enough good things about him.
So you grew up in Hoboken, actually. That was your hometown?
I grew up in Ringwood, New Jersey.
Oh, Ringwood.
I grew up in Ringwood.
I Ringwood was a lot of my life in my
Yeah,
whole
so up in
life.
the Highlands, right? Yeah, it's a Erskine
Well,
Lake.
no, for another
North.
reason. It is up in the Highlands, but when I first came to EPA, there had been a big controversy about Ringwood
The Ford,
because
the
Ford
Ford
Motor
state. Yep.
Company had dumped a lot of its toxic waste there.
Yep.
And they entered into an agreement with EPA to end its Superfund status, but the site really had not been properly cleaned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the population there was people of color who felt
Yep.
discriminated and who accurately felt discriminated against in society from the very beginning. And there was a series, I think the author was John Barry, who wrote about this in the Bergen Record. And I read these articles. I said, this is the first place I'm going to
Hmm.
because this is wrong. We got to put it back on the Superfund list.
Yeah,
And I'm
you were
gonna
right.
brag a little bit about this. I made history. It was the first time in the history of Superfund that you had a site that had its status as a Superfund site ended, and then I got it back on the list. And I worked in a bipartisan way on that with Frank Lautenberg, and I was glad I did because Frank and I had a rough history. I had been for
Hmm.
Chuck Time when he ran for U.S. Senate, and it was a bitter campaign between the two of them. But nevertheless, I always gave Frank credit for this. He could rise above the partisan fray when it was a
Yeah.
matter that he felt had a societal interest involved. And
Yeah,
so, go
I
ahead.
went
I'm
to
sorry.
school. I went to public school with that community, the Native American community back there,
Right.
and so I knew them all personally, and that was an issue. Not all of them. I knew some of them personally, and that was an issue that had been bubbling for years. So it was yeah, huge. Obviously, living in Hoboken I'm sorry, Ringwood at the time, growing up in Ringwood, something I knew well. I mean, we played baseball at the Little League fields. If you drove to that area, you know it. you pass by those Little League fields, they're probably less than a mile away from there. Spent a
I
lot of
still,
my
I got
a lot of my
interviewed.
childhood there.
No, that was, it was emotionally, it was tough for me emotionally because I said, we have to be successful here. And what happened, I was interviewed on ABC television on the then Nightline show. And I was, me, I can engage in levity, enjoy life, but I was deadly serious during that interview. I said, if I was a resident of Ringwood, I would have been bitter also because
Mm,
there was a lot of bitterness among the community, and they had every right to be. But
yep.
thankfully, we got it back on that list.
Great job.
So you were working, you were working at that time with a PR firm, and then you ended up in the gubernatorial campaign of Phil Murphy, and you have been one of his key central advisors ever since. And I've got to give you credit for, well, I can give you credit for a lot of things, but two things in particular. Number one, I think you had a lot to do with the changed image of Hoboken. Now, I always loved Hoboken for strange reasons. Number one, I'm a Frank Sinatra fan. And Frank, I believe it was when he was campaigning for Ronald Reagan in 1984, and Tom Kean was governor, and Frank came home to Hoboken. They had a lot of great artists from Hoboken. Another one was Jimmy Roselli, who
Mm,
many
okay.
people thought was an even better singer than Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
But Hoboken really, its image changed. It was looked upon at one time as a town that had seen its last days. But thanks to your efforts and Mayor Zimmer, now Hoboken is viewed as a Renaissance town.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
town
Well,
that,
it was, listen, it was getting there before then, but I would like to think that she did a lot to get it on the right track. It was when we took over, the city was under state fiscal control because they had driven the finances into the ground. It was corrupt as all hell.
was Mayor
Someone,
Russo at the time, I think.
Russo was 93 to 01, and then before us was Dave Roberts, who's a good man, by the way.
Yeah,
But
I remember because I went up to maybe our paths crossed then. I was up in Hoboken. It was the site of the first game in the history of baseball.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we formed something called the New Jersey Sports Commission, Sports Entertainment Commission. It was a very ad hoc commission. Bernie Kennedy and I got it together. And I was in the Whitman administration at the time. And we had a special celebration for the 150th anniversary of baseball. But we used this commission as a way to raise money for a statue of Jackie Robinson, which is now at the PATH terminal in Jersey City.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it was really, it was great. I met Bobby Thompson at this celebration.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, the man who hit the famous home run on
I know.
October 3,
Yeah.
1951. Very
Sure.
good guy. And I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan, and I still liked him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hard not to.
It was a great celebration. Hoboken is a great town, and
Great
I
town.
hope, quite frankly, you're a credit to Hoboken, and it'd be great if you always lived there, with your
Yeah,
family.
yeah, yeah. No, we've moved on in our lives. We're in Maplewood now, which we also love. Right, I'm speaking to you right now from deep in the heart of the Green Mountains up here in Vermont. But
You're on vacation.
we're yes, yeah, we're out of town right now. But we are in Maplewood now, raising two kids. But we go back to Hoboken often.
Well, that's good because I will always have a special fondness for Hoboken, and I think you've given our viewers. So let me ask you this: are there any programs for aspiring young consultants that they can maybe? You had to really make your own way in a tough world. Is there an easier path now for people who want to go into political consultancy?
I don't think so. I mean, like,
It's tough
listen,
then.
you got to go through, you got to go into the deep end. You got to, I mean, listen, the good news in New Jersey is it's like a jobs program for political consultants because we've got elections every
Every
year.
year.
We've got it's either legislative, gubernatorial, congressional, presidential, senatorial.
Well,
Uh,
that's why I love New Jersey so much.
it's a jobs program. It never stops.
It
So
never ever
and listen, there is a lack of talent that goes into the field, which I think is crazy because it's a good field. And listen, you can do good and do well if you truly care and you do it the right way, and you work hard and all that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, I'm working right now on legislative races, the Democratic legislative races, and a lot of the conversations are about trying to find talent, the right talent for this campaign, that campaign, whether it's a field organizer, whether it's a campaign manager, comms director. It's not easy right now. So there's plenty of opportunity there if people want to go into the field. I wouldn't be surprised, Alan, if they didn't, because even from, when I started my career not all that long ago, 17 years ago, which I guess sounds a bit longer than it did in my head when I said it. Um, uh, Politics was a bit different, and it really is pretty divisive and gross and off-putting now, far more than it was then.
It
Um,
is. It
and
gets bigger.
I wouldn't be surprised if young people didn't want to go into it. But listen, if they do, there's incredible opportunities. And listen, everyone always has their sights set on DC, right? I want to work in the White House. I want to go work for a congressperson. Go work for your mayor. Your mayor is the one that's making things actually happen. Your mayor is the one that's actually affecting people's lives. The board of ed, the mayor, the governor, your local assembly person. I mean, they're making decisions that are actually affecting people's lives. So, look local.
Well, elections are a lot more professional nowadays than they used to be. I'll tell you, I was involved as campaign treasurer for one of my all-time favorite people, passed away a few years ago, John Rocco, who was an assemblyman from Camden County, the Cherry Hill area. Wonderful guy, and he's the guy that brought me back into politics at full time. And John has a real honored place in my life. But he had been a school he had been a school principal, and he'd been active in the union and all the rest. And but he was a Republican, and yet he appealed to all sides of the fence in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and throughout Camden County. But at that time, I remember in that campaign, I think we raised something like $50,000, and it was one of the top priority campaigns in the state.
Yeah,
Fifty
yeah, yeah.
thousand dollars nowadays isn't going to get you a glass of water in a campaign.
No, it
You know,
doesn't.
the amount. I'll tell you what I think changed things. I can just take the
Sure.
historical aside. This came out of Camden County. George Norcross has his defenders, he has his detractors, but one thing he did, which I'll always give him credit for, he brought politics, competitive politics, into the 21st century when he started using television. He was county chair of Camden County Democratic chair. And in 1991, when the Republicans, excuse me, gained control of both houses of the legislature, the Senate and the Assembly, and they had veto-proof majorities, it was a reaction against the tax hikes of Jim Florio at the time. And so they had both houses. And in order to do it, because the Democrats really got slaughtered in the election of 1991. It was an off-year election. Yet Jim Florio almost came back and almost defeated Christie Whitman in 1993. But in that election of 1991 was the first time you saw campaigns go on network television. It wasn't that
Hmm.
long ago when you think about it. It
No.
was just a little more than 20 years. And I'll tell you what he did. He had a commercial the night of the sixth game of the World Series, Minnesota Twins against the Atlanta Braves. It was a great World Series, and in the commercial was slated to run during the news. It was slated to run during the news. It was on a Saturday night. I guess it would have been 11 o'clock. The game went into extra innings,
Uh,
and so therefore this commercial ran. I guess it was around 11:30. Jack Buck was broadcasting. Kirby Puckett hit a home run, and Jack Buck said, "There's a long fly ball driven deep, and we'll see you tomorrow."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That forced it to go into one of the greatest seventh games in the history of baseball. So I'll never forget that commercial, because it came on during the when the game was still on. It got a viewership that was incredible. It was a commercial for the state Senate race between the incumbent, who was the late Lee Laskin on the Republican side, and the Democrat was John Adler, who also,
Um,
excuse me, was a good friend of mine. And John Adler, unfortunately, has passed away since then. But that commercial, it made history. I think Neil Oxman may have done the commercial, but that commercial made history, and it was responsible for the Democrats winning their only seat. Now,
wow, what a story.
yeah, it's a historic story. Now down in the Cherry Hill area, producer Doc Yaris lives down there, and he got his started in politics working for John Adler. So
All
John
right.
Adler, may he rest in peace, has a connection with this website,
There
and
you go.
I like
There you go.
John. When my son was going to Kelman Academy, it was a Jewish day school in Cherry Hill, and John Adler came by to speak right before the 1993 election. My son had just been bar mitzvah. He was 13 years old. And he started asking, he learned a lot from me about politics. He's now in the field of public relations, doing very well. But my son was asking questions, and he asked John Adler about the Quality Education Act. And John came to me the next day. He said, "You got a real ringer in John Adler and your son." John Adler said, "Your son is a real ringer." He said that as a compliment. So I'll never forget that, and that was when John was reelected for the first time. Now, let me
Fantastic.
ask you something. As a consultant, you're known to be a superb man of message. When you know about Dan Bryan, you say, if you need a messenger and you need a message, he's the guy. Now, you also, though, have been in campaigns that were quite proficient in media production. Phil Murphy's in particular. Nowadays, let's say it's a statewide campaign. Do you need to hire a separate consultant just for the media production? Or
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah. No, it really is a kind of, I tend to do more strategist stuff, right? Message strategy,
But you
communication
provide
strategy.
the message, you provide the software for all of
I
it.
help create it, right? I'm working on a fantastic, actually shot you a note about her earlier today. Fantastic candidate for CD7 next year, Rebecca Bennett. But
She is an excellent candidate. You
she's
know,
great. She's great. I had a wonderful write up in the Jewish Insider, which is why I sent it to you. I thought it was right up
yeah,
your alley.
I tried to open that and I couldn't open it because
I'll shoot you
I
the I'll shoot you the text.
if you can
So
shoot me a text, let me ask you something, because you're a good friend of the Jewish community, and very much a good friend. And there's been problems with a lot of the Democratic Party candidates are guided by the vision of AOC, which I think is a bad vision. I think you can be instrumental. Rebecca's going to be running against Tom Kaine Jr., who's been
yep.
good on Israel, but you may have next year, it could be an anti Republican trend. So I think you can be instrumental in guiding Rebecca to a good pro Israel position, which would be a source of pride to the Jewish community of New Jersey. And I could say it came from my good friend Dan Bryan.
No, listen. Lucky enough, I'm working for a candidate that doesn't have to come from me. It's coming from her. She's a believer. Obviously, huge fan of the community and a believer
That's great
in
news.
in Israel. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's coming from her. But I bring her up because it's just something. It's a present moment thing. I am kind of the general consultant, really, just kind of overall strategy guy on the campaign. But we have a media team, and we all kind of work together. Listen, the best campaign teams are the ones that are collaborative, and
I
I'm
think
lucky.
that is going to be a multi-million-dollar race, and I
Oh, no
think
question.
I
It'll
think it
be
will.
eight figures easy.
8 figures. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Given where we are, it was last cycle, right? And it's only going to be bigger this cycle. Um, so yeah. Listen, you work with the media team. Working with and Governor Murphy's campaigns. I was lucky enough to work with two of my mentors, Brad Lawrence and Steve D'Amico, two of the best to ever do it, as
He's a
far as I'm concerned.
superhuman being too,
Yeah, and not
and he's
only.
originally from Brooklyn, so that made he and I.
Oh, there you go. But
Uh,
it's his business partner Steve as well, and they are
D'Amico's excellent.
not only two of the best to ever do it in New Jersey, two of the best to do it, period, in the country, as far as I'm concerned. So, but learned a lot working with them, especially in the first campaign in 2016 and 17. And listen, the more collaborative it is, the better. Good ideas, doesn't matter who they come from, right? And I was lucky enough to sneak in an idea here and there. I probably had a whole lot more bad ones than good ones and early on.
Oh,
Uh,
I doubt it.
you could argue that I do now as well. But if you're working with a good collaborative team, they'll, take the best ideas from everybody and work it up. So no, it's a teamwork approach. You work with your media team, you work with your digital team, you work with the pollster, right? And
It's so complicated nowadays,
well, it doesn't have to be. If you do it
but
the
you
right way,
have to know a little
it
about
really
each
should be
aspect.
seamless. Say it again.
you have to know a little about each aspect. I mean, you have to know about television production. You have to know about
Yep.
digital production. I mean,
Yep.
that makes you so valuable.
But listen, if you do it enough times, it just becomes second nature, right? And like nothing replaces experience. Nothing replaces experience. So anyway, long story short, you work with the whole team to develop it. I think I'm usually a part of that process, helping to drive the process, but by no means am I the only one creating the message. By no means am I the only one, making the final decisions.
Well,
If
I'm
you do
going
it
to want
the
you
right way,
again
it's if you're doing it the right way, it's a team.
I'm going to want you again on this podcast when that campaign's going on, because that is
Absolutely.
going to be one of the top 10 campaigns in the country, I think.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No,
I think it will be, if Mikey Sherrill's elected governor, the Democratic primary will be very intensive in New Jersey to be her successor. But at the same time, and the successor in that case could be your friend. I know your friend Brendan Gill is
Brendan,
from
yeah, of course,
too.
yeah.
He's going to probably be one of the top candidates for that.
No question,
You
no
know,
question.
so but of course we got a big gubernatorial right now. But that my point is that that campaign will have so much money from the National Democratic Congressional Committee and everything else, and that'll be really a full time job that is overwhelming.
Yeah, but listen, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's when Democrats were probably coming from slightly different places on this one, Alan, but when Democrats are three seats down in the majority right now, and I mean, you can make the case, and I say this to Rebecca all the time, you can make the case that if we don't flip CD7, we don't take the House back. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I really do. If Democrats aren't winning campaigns like this in districts like this, we are not taking the House back,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
This is not an easy one. It's going to be a tough one, but we can win it. We can do it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is as important as taking the House back and providing a much needed check on this White House, which desperately
I
needs a check.
I am not a
Uh,
fan of Donald Trump. I am an
yeah,
anti Donald Trump person, as you know very
yeah,
well.
yeah,
I'm
yeah. Of
supporting
course, of
Jack
course.
Ciattarelli because I love him, and I think he is a centrist, center right Republican, which is a rare commodity. But nevertheless, Donald Trump is not my cup of tea by a
Yep.
long shot, and you are going to need checks and balances. But I
No
think
question.
it's going to be a very intense political year, even perhaps more intense than this year is.
Yep.
Lots at stake.
Yeah.
I don't think the Democrats are going to be able to capture the Senate, although if Trump's difficulties continue to multiply, it may be.
Yeah, listen, we're gonna live 15 lives between now and next year's midterms. So there's really no way to know what's going to be in play, out of play, other than the fact that I think, you know, CD9, I feel pretty good about. I think Nellie Poe's putting together a pretty good campaign, and she's, taking that one seriously. Hopefully she'll be okay there. I believe she will. And then CD7 is going to be competitive. And that's what we're focused on right now.
It definitely is competitive, and Rebecca is a person who has attracted a lot of positive attention. So I can't wait to follow that race. I'll be
Yeah, yeah.
calling you all the time to give me inside
Any,
info.
anytime, anytime.
You know, well, let me ask you something related to Congress and related to the party relationships, because there's a lot. I have my own position on this. The question is, how much does national picture affect local races? And I'll give you an example of what I mean. A lot of, and I'm going to refrain from outrageous partisanship in this broadcast because I am appreciative of the fact that I could get you on here. But in terms of the Cheryl campaign, I'm not saying this critically. I'm saying this methodically. I'm saying this analytically. Their feeling is that Trump is going to be a tremendous drag on Jack Ciattarelli. And Jack Ciattarelli's position is that this campaign will be decided based on state issues and not federal issues. What's your feeling on that? I'm not going to get in a big argument with you on this, but
No, sure, of course, of course.
it's going to be a
I'd
very
never argue with you on your podcast, Alan.
well.
Uh,
You can argue with me on podcast.
no, 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 yeah, I'm
If
just
it's a spirited, friendly argument, it's
sure,
great.
sure, sure.
But
No,
the
so
reason
like,
is I can't
it's
get. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's a smart question. And like, listen, of course, we're going to see a lot said about the president one way or another. I think the point that I see the Cheryl campaign making is less I don't like Donald Trump and therefore vote for me. And it's more, I can stand up for this state to Donald Trump, to my party, and to the president, no matter who it is, because I'm not putting anyone in front of this state. Whereas flip that on Jack Ciattarelli, this is a guy who has said in interviews, I can't think of anything I disagree with the president on. There's just we know him, right? He's not going to stand up to Trump on anything meaningful, right? He'll find little things
Well,
here.
you never know what's going to
He
happen.
picked Picatinny. Really, oh, I disagree with him on Picatinny. Oh, there's a tough one. Okay, so you support keeping the funding for the local military base. There's a real tough one, Jack. So I think she's driving a personal value of he will never. And this is we're going to be saying the same thing about Tom Kaine next year, by the way, right? We're already saying it. These are people who will never be able to stand up to the president for what's best for either their district or their state. Jack Ciattarelli and Tom Kaine. Whereas Mikey Sherrill, she stood up to her party when she was one of the first people to call for Joe Biden not to run again. And that was not an easy thing at the time, by the way. And she got a lot of flack for it. So
Mhm.
now it looks like, oh, of course she did. She did it early. And it was not an easy thing to do. So she can stand up to her party and she can certainly stand up to the president to do the right thing for the state. And I think that the point that she is making about Jack Ciattarelli is he doesn't have that ability. So we're going to have someone in there that is not going to be able to be a check on the president the way that this governor currently has been. He's worked with the president when he's wanted to, but he's also stood up to him in a very real way, and he's been able to play the game with the president to deliver results for the state. It's been incredibly important. And will the next governor be able to do the same thing? So I think what she's driving there, Alan, is an underlying value about who those candidates are, who they fight for, who they stand for, and what they stand for, rather than just the simplified Donald Trump is bad, vote for me. Does that make sense?
Well, let me give you no. That's a very legitimate argument, and I'm going to give you this isn't my positive or negative argument either way. Let me give you the counter argument because we've already witnessed this in New Jersey history, and it took place in the year of 1981. I was involved in Tom Kaine's campaign. In 1981, Jim Florio, who ended up being one of my closest friends in life, I have missed him very badly. His passing was a definite depressant for me. But at that time, in Camden County, politics ain't beanbag. It was a tough road to hope. But he was the Democrat nominee for governor, and Tom Kaine was a Republican nominee. So Florio's whole campaign was how rotten Ronald Reagan was. Now, I loved Ronald Reagan, but he certainly was different from Donald Trump. I curse anybody who tries to say that the two are similar. That's a lot of garbage. But Reagan was unpopular at that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so Florio based his whole campaign legitimately. I hold one thing against her. I wish she wouldn't call Jack a Trump lackey because that adds a personal thing in there. I don't think that's necessary for her to make the argument against Trump. I'm as anti-Trump as she is, quite frankly, and I'm very negative on her, but I'm as anti-Trump as she is. But here's what happened in that campaign. Kaine had a relationship with Reagan. Reagan campaigned with him, and Florio, day after day, not his whole campaign, but a lot of his campaign was built about how terrible Ronald Reagan was for the state of New Jersey. So Kaine stood up at the debate and he said, guess what? He said, I can work with that administration in Washington. They're going to need me to work with them in order that we can. There's a lot of, as you know, better than almost anybody, given your experience, disputes arise between states, federal government, and federal government and localities like New York City. And what Kaine did is he turned what seemed to be a negative at the time, his relationship with Reagan, into a positive. He said, I can work with that administration. I have a friendship there. And it will be better for New Jersey if I'm in instead of Jim Florio because I have a good relationship with them. And Jim Florio does not have that kind of relationship. And that worked. And I'll tell you why it worked. I keep this in mind, all my listeners. In that election, the day before the election, I'll never forget this day. And Jim Florio later admitted to me it was a terrible mistake on his part. He goes out there on Monday morning. The election was on Tuesday, and they didn't get the result really in that election for almost a month. There was a recount. I was involved in a
Wow.
recount. John Carbone from Hoboken was the Republican recount attorney. A
Okay.
very colorful guy. I couldn't help but like him. He was a character. He was a recount guy. I'll never forget that election, the drama that was involved in that. But Kane said that, and Florio was saying something different. He said, "You've made sure that it has the impact of a punch in the face." He shouldn't have used that phrase. Mikey hasn't said anything like that, but Florio said, "You made sure that it has the impact of to give him a punch in the face." And, in Florio, you had to take it seriously. He was a former boxer in the military. And so that night, Kane squeaked through. He squeaked through. It was over a few weeks later. And Kane and Florio was the first to admit. He said, "I gave a criticism of Reagan that sounded too personal. It sounded too personal." That's why I think, I'm not saying that this makes her a bad person or anything like that. That's why I think this use of the phrase lackey, when it gets that personal, it can, even though Trump is a rotten guy and Reagan was a great guy, okay? And Trump, what he just did recently with the Bureau of Labor Statistics was insane. I used to go to bed at night, scared as hell of Trump becoming a dictator. I know he'd like to be a dictator. I have no fear of that anymore because he's too incompetent. He's adult. So now my worry is how badly he can screw up. I won't use the colorful language that I could use if this wasn't a family show.
Right.
But the point is, she's got to watch that. She's got to watch that. If even as bad of a guy as Trump is, as dislikable as he is, voters don't like criticism when it gets that personal. So this is going to be a very interesting test case, in my view. I'm not saying this positively or negatively of either candidate, but I have this indelible memory of 1981.
Listen, I'm going to show my Murphy bona fides here and say and use a sports analogy. We're probably in the second inning right now. There's a whole lot of game to be played.
Oh, so, I agree.
And really, this campaign, you know this, Alan, because you've been through this 1,000 times.
I've been putting out tweets every day, giving sports analogies.
There you go. This campaign really hasn't started. It's going to start after Labor Day when the paid
I agree.
Up. So, listen, there's a lot that the campaigns are going to be doing over the course of the summer. But for the most part, people are going to key into this race and when the paid media starts post Labor Day. So, whole lot of game to be played. I'm confident the Cheryl team, listen, all they did was receive criticism throughout the primary on they should be doing this better, they should be doing that better. And this is happens when you're the favorite, right? You get the slings and arrows. But they stuck to their guns, they stuck to their media strategy, they stuck to their campaign strategy. They defied almost every single poll with their victory. She won by 13 points in a very, very crowded, difficult field.
Let me tell you where I give that campaign credit. And Brad Lawrence is a friend of mine, okay?
Yeah.
And our friendship survived that campaign. But I give them credit for this. I thought it was going to be a low turnout election.
Yeah. And
that turnout in the primary blew my mind. What do you think caused such a high turnout? Was it their efforts?
Well, listen, part of it is just goes to show how difficult and competitive this primary was. You had 6 real, usually when you see a race like this that's crowded, that you can kind of tier it. Okay, here are the real candidates. Here are the kind of real candidates, and here are the joke candidates, right? You had 6 real candidates from the get-go, right? The candidate that came in 5th, Sean Spiller, spent $45 million. Right. So and the candidate that came in 6th, by the way, ran a great race and was a former state Senate president. So, you had 6 candidates spending real money, running real races. It was incredibly competitive, and they all spoke to their bases, right? So I think that helped drive turnout up. But I think also, listen, people were excited about Mikey Sherrill. Mikey Sherrill won places like Morris County, where, it's obviously far more independent conservative. And she won my town of Maplewood, which is super progressive. So she won places. She won all over the place. She won, I think 16 of the 21 counties, something like that. She had an incredible crossover appeal through all.
She had a great result. Let me ask you a quick question. Boy, I could have you on for 2 hours, but your wife would hate me if I did that. Yeah. But let me ask you a question. I had an experience the other day where I met the lieutenant governor candidate, and I was blown away. He was really impressive, Jim Gannon. I didn't know a thing about him. He was really impressive, and his knowledge of issues, his personality, and even Dick Cody likes him. Even Mikey Sherrill likes him.
Yeah.
But I think that he made a brilliant strategic move. A lot of people at the time said that, he went to a person of the same gender, Ciattarelli. it was a brilliant move, regardless of how this election turns out, because Morris County has had a Democrat trend, which I attribute. This could be part of a national discussion. People are moving from the cities and bringing their Democratic voting habits with them, and that has, I think, impacted Morris County and has made it much more open to Democrats. And this guy is a very popular Republican, so that was a big consideration there. I don't know Dale Caldwell. Tell us a little about him, because I'd love to have him on this podcast, although I think the campaign will tell him that Alan Steinberg is poison and stay away from him.
I wouldn't be
I
surprised.
understand. That's all.
Wouldn't be
If
surprised.
you can
Yeah,
persuade him
listen.
to come on, I'll treat him very nice.
By all reports, Jim Gannon is a really good guy. That's what everyone says.
Super guy.
I would say that if Jack Ciattarelli is worried about Morris County, he's in trouble, because a Republican needs Morris County. A Democrat absolutely does not. I mean, Mikey.
Well, no, he's not in trouble, but they're not getting the margins they normally. This has been true in every election recently.
Yeah.
But what's your feeling? But tell us about Dale Caldwell.
Yeah. So listen, Dale Caldwell. I don't know him. Would love to meet him. Would love to get to know him. He is so obviously college president. Incredibly successful in his career. He's a pastor at a church. Really kind of like has experience that's run the gamut. He's been in local politics. He's been on the school board in North Brunswick, which goes back to our conversation earlier in this hour, which is you really want to affect things, run locally. He's done that. So he's been in politics. He can connect with faith communities up and down the state. He's been in higher education, which is obviously one of the more important issues in the state today. So listen, I think it was a home run pick. I think it made a whole lot of sense. Again, all reports. I don't know either LG candidate, but all reports out of both of them are they're great guys. I think Mikey Sherrill put up a candidate that broadens her appeal. I think Jack Ciattarelli puts one up that kind of he put up a candidate that you would have thought he was up 10 points in the polls. Does that make sense? It doesn't do much to broaden his.
No, I think it was the opposite there. I think that he's got to shore up his base. And if Morris County comes in the way it used to come in, and I think that's a goal, he's got an excellent chance of winning.
Yeah. Well, but listen, at the end of the day, like I went through this in 2017 with a dearly departed who I loved, Sheila Oliver, who we were so excited
Great
for.
lady.
And she was like incredible, not only for the tickets, both tickets in 17 and 21, and for the administration. At the end of the day, gubernatorial race is the top of the ticket race, right?
I agree, but it can. You and I are on the same page in that. But nevertheless, there's two situations. Number one, if you have a bad lieutenant governor candidate, it can hurt you down.
Sure, yeah, do no harm.
What's interesting is one of my favorite people is Kim Guadagno. She's been a dear friend of mine. Even though I had a terrible relationship with Chris Christie, she was I talked to her today. I talk to her all the time.
Right.
Kim was a county sheriff, just like Jim Gannon is.
That's right.
A lot of counties, the sheriff, in a lot of counties, the sheriff is the face of the party.
Yeah, that's where the jobs are.
It's fascinating. I used to think the sheriff was like the Andy Griffith show, but
that's right. There's a lot of jobs.
It's an important political platform also. So this will be interesting. I wish I had more time. You're one of the best guests I could have on. But let me ask you this as we get to the finish line here. I'm noticing something in the polling, and if you disagree, I'd probably defer to you over myself. It's pretty structural right now. Democratic registrants are voting for Mikey. Republican registrants are supporting Ciattarelli. I think the independents are going to decide this race. I don't have a firm grasp as to where they're at right now. But I think that this race, as you say, it'll start on Labor Day. It's going to be very intense on a lot of television. I think that independents are going to decide. Well, what's your view on what I just said?
I think that, listen, lots been said about the Republicans making up the registration gap in the state. 4 or 5 years ago, it was a million more Democrats than Republicans. Now it's about 800,000. So they've made up ground. I will note that 800,000 is still a pretty big number. So I do think that if Mikey Sherrill can shore up her base, turn out urban areas, and win over a good chunk of independents, which she's been doing her entire career, and including flipping CD11, appealing to independents and even conservative leaning independents. And 5% of Republicans, something like that, not an incredible amount, but like a very, very little bit. That should be enough for her to win pretty handily.
If she
Um,
carries the independents, she definitely wins. If
I
she
think if you're
carries the
Jack
independents.
Ciattarelli, you desperately need the Democratic base to stay home, right? I mean, even with you look at 21, that election in 21, that was it was a dream electorate for a Republican in 2021. That is a generational electorate for a
And I
Republican.
didn't think the Republicans had a chance going into
And
election
and
day.
well, listen, it's funny. We always talk about how close it was. I kind of look at it the flip way that you're never going to get a better electorate than that, and they lost by 3.5 points. So the question for Jack Ciattarelli is this: how do you make up that gap? I would be shocked if you got that same electorate that we did in 21 and 2025.
Well,
I
what was
just
so
don't think
good
it's
about
possible.
the electorate in
Well,
2021?
you had incredible turnout I mean, start here. You had a Democratic trifecta in both DC and in Trenton, right? So you had the Democratic trifecta in DC. At the time, the Democrats couldn't tie their shoes down there. They couldn't pass the infrastructure bill, couldn't do this, couldn't do that.
Right.
Afghanistan was, a disaster. Um, and voters, were exhausted by COVID. We had just gone into yet another, I think it was Omicron, yet another COVID variant. People were as pissed off and cranky as they had ever been, and they were taking it out on Democrats. You saw a Republican turnout surge in Monmouth County and Ocean counties, and you saw Democratic turnout
True.
dip a little bit in places like Essex, Passaic, and Hudson. It was a dream electorate, and they lost. So the question I always go back to, we people like to go back and tell all these history stories about hard to win 3 terms in a row, first party, all these different things. A Republican has not won statewide in this state in 12 years since 2013. What
Right.
is different about this year that this is going to be the year a Republican can win statewide? 12 years is a very long time. It's a long time. What can he do differently? I don't see him doing anything differently.
Well,
He's
I
learned.
think there's a couple issues that may help them. Real estate taxes, and those bills go out this month. And the other issue is the energy bills. I think that's going to be the center of the campaign. I'm not making predict. Listen,
Oh, sure, of course.
I give good analysis. My predictions are off and off. I admit that.
Well, I'm out of the prediction business as well after 2016.
I'm out of that business.
Yeah.
I am not going to make my political. I know politics very well, so I give good analysis. But my political predictions are often worse than my sports predictions. And if I bet on my sports predictions, I'd be broke. Okay.
Well, we got another minute here, Alan. Tell me, are the Mets going to make the playoffs? What's going on here?
Well, I think that's why I'm wearing the cap.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, they need you.
But I think the team to look for is the Milwaukee Brewers.
Oh, they're going to play them this weekend, right?
Yeah, Milwaukee Brewers are the team to look out for.
Yeah.
But who do you root for?
The Mets. I'm a Met fan.
Oh, man, if I have I have a 20 game package. If I have an extra ticket for one of the games, you're going with me.
All right, let me know. I was with Gary Taffet.
Gary's one of my best friends.
Last season, this season, he went up and said hi to you. But yeah, no, he's.
Oh, you were there for that game? You should have come and
I,
said hello to me.
yeah, I don't think I knew. I think I found out afterwards.
I could
But
have
no,
taken you to the kosher
I've been a
boot
Mets
stand.
fan since the '90s. I remember watching in '94 when they went into the strike. They went into extra innings, and they were the last game to be played going into the '94 strike.
Right.
And I stayed up watching that game. So no,
Well, this has been
I've been in the trenches with the Mets for quite a long time.
All right. Well, no, before the season's out, I'll tell your wife that it is an religious obligation for Dan to go to
All
a
right,
game.
there you go.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much. I could have held you here for another hour, but you have a family to attend to.
It went quick, Alan. I really appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of yours. Love what you do here. Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor.
And I'm going to beg you to come back. Oh, you're one guest I beg to come back over and over again because there's going to be a lot of interesting discussion we can have. And if people watch the tone of our discussion tonight, no anger, strict analysis, search for common ground. Damn it, this is what politics ought to be about.
Amen.
So Dan, terrific. Best of luck on the legislative elections. It's going to be interesting. And to my listeners out there, I told my lady love, Garnet, I was telling her that I'm so into music, I feel like singing a song on each broadcast. She said, "Don't you dare."
Yeah,
so I won't.
Pretty smart. She's a smart girl.
Oh, yes, she is. Okay. But that concludes this broadcast of the dynamic political centrism. I thank, as always, our producer, the doc, Dr. Yonatan Yaris, and I thank our guest who, as far as I'm concerned, always has a seat at the table on this show, Dan Bryan. That concludes our broadcast. Let's go, Mets. It ain't over till it's over, as Yogi Berra used to say. And thank you to all our listeners. And in this difficult election year of 2025, may we find common ground in New Jersey so we can disagree without being disagreeable. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the latest edition of Dynamic Political Centrism. Check back each week for our newest episodes, and you can catch past episodes online via YouTube and Spotify, and please subscribe to our Substack.